Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
I'm starting the day already exhausted. Pre-exhausted, if you will. Actually, post-exhausted after the Kamala Harris rally that descended upon the city of Atlanta, Georgia State University's brand new Convocation Center. By the way, first time I've had a chance to visit that venue since it opened. I'd been wanting to go check out some basketball games there and just haven't had the time. What a nice venue. Georgia State University has a first-class college facility for their athletic program, for their convocation events, graduations, etc. Fantastic venue in Summerhill. Still got to work on the traffic getting out of Summerhill. It reminded me of my childhood leaving Fulton County Stadium for Braves games and the parking lot sit and wait scenario. Getting out of the parking lot really wasn't all that difficult. Getting out of Summerhill, however, oh my gosh. We found our way out eventually. I will say this, my 50-year-old... My 50-year-old body, yada, 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 is aching, standing in concrete, on concrete sidewalks for a couple of hours waiting to get in. We started in heat, intense heat and sunshine, and then we had a random thunder shower because it's Atlanta in July come through and kind of soak us. Fortunately, at that point in time, the line where we had moved up under some trees next to a bus, so we were somewhat shielded. It didn't stop 10,000 plus people from coming to see Vice President Kamala Harris address the city of Atlanta with surprise guests, who we'll get to. First, you just heard a clip of Megan Thee Stallion performing. This is unlike any political rally I've ever been to in my life. Quavo was one of the surprise guests. He is an important, I believe, surrogate. I can't believe I'm saying this. He's an important surrogate in the Harris for President campaign. We've made lots of notations over the last few months about the right's attempt to chip away at the African-American vote. Most notably, the male African-American vote. A lot of dudes at this rally yesterday. A lot of fellas. So Quavo was there, Megan Thee Stallion, obviously. It was a concert before it was a political rally. Actually, no, it was a political rally, then a concert, then a political rally. Stacey Abrams on hand, and you had the two senators, Ossoff and Warnock. I didn't think they were going to be there because I knew they had work to do in Washington yesterday. So that was a nice surprise. My Congresswoman, Representative Nikema Williams, we put in a request to have her on again, so hopefully we'll get her on soon. She seems to be a bit more excited. I listened to her yesterday on the Politically Georgia podcast. A lot less defensive as a surrogate for the Biden-Harris ticket and a lot more enthusiastic. By the way, happy birthday to her. Yesterday was her birthday. A lot more enthusiastic now that she is, as is the rest of the party, fully unified behind Kamala Harris as the party's presumptive nominee. But before we dive into all that, and we'll have Kamala Harris's full address from yesterday in Atlanta in that packed venue, her largest rally to date. Got to focus on what I think is a huge story here in Georgia, and that is the Georgia Secretary of State's office, Brad Raffensperger and company, rolling out a new website. Another, in my mind, vulnerability for hackers. And not that they're immune to that, because we've seen with the Coffee County breach and various other breaches over the years that as we head into the November election, what are we, 97 days away, 96? We're dealing with vulnerabilities using the same Dominion voting software and machines. They say they've updated and upgraded, and we're fine. We've seen multiple opportunities for ne'er-do-wells to ne'er-do-well. From the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yesterday, Georgia creates a website for voters to cancel their own registrations. Well, sure, the voters could, but who else could cancel other folks' registrations en masse? We'll talk with Marilyn Marks, executive director at the Coalition for Good Governance about this. Mark Neese' article gives us a brief description of this real quick. A new Georgia website makes it easier for voters who moved away to cancel their own voter registration without having to wait for the government to confirm that they're no longer residents. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger launched the voter registration cancellation website Monday, providing an online method for voters to remove their outdated registrations. Previously, voters had to fill out a cancellation form and return it to their county's election office. The website is another way to remove ineligible voters from Georgia's registration list, along with routine cancellations and voter eligibility challenges. This is a convenient tool for any voter who wants to secure their voter registration by canceling their old one when they move out of state, according to Brad Raffensperger. That's a quote. It will also help keep Georgia's voter registration database up to date without having to rely on postcards being sent and returned by an increasingly inefficient postal system, he says. Joining me to discuss is the executive director, vice president at the Coalition for Good Governance. Thank you for getting up so early for me this morning, Marilyn Marks, joining us. So,
no problem.
I have to ask, first of all, I see where conservatives are thrilled to see this new website roll out, thinking that this is going to somehow alleviate the activists who have been challenging the voter rolls for years now. But Democrats are also concerned about the potential for, again, thievery, for hackery, for folks to come, even just like, a bitter ex-spouse getting on and saying, well, I know so-and-so Social Security number and all that information. Just it's simple information necessary to remove someone from the voter rolls. And my question is, I don't understand why conservative activists are applauding this or even why this website's necessary. If you move out of state, why are you worried about your voter registration from out of state? When you go to register at the next place, that sort of takes care of itself. It's not like you're going to use that voter. I'm trying to understand the necessity of a website like this.
Well, it certainly is not necessary and shouldn't be there. If you want to go back to kind of why conservatives are worried about bloated voter rolls, it is it's a legitimate concern because if one moves out of state and you register at another state, you're now registered in 2 states. There's nothing that automatically takes care of itself.
Right.
And there is the possibility, although very few people ever abuse the system this way, there is the possibility that people do vote in 2 states. They'll ask for a mail ballot from Georgia and go to their polling place in North Carolina. So there is some limited opportunity for abuse. But generally, over time, that does take care of itself, as the Secretary of State's required to, over time, keep the voter rolls current. But that doesn't happen very automatically or very quickly. Now, conservatives have been screaming about bloated voter rolls, but they never really come to the table with, and look, we've got thousands of people that really did vote twice,
right,
or anything. It's there's a risk, but the risk is overblown, quite frankly, Ron.
Well, and anytime we see some sort of scenario like that, it usually winds up being conservatives who have done it. I believe it was Herschel Walker's wife who voted in Texas and in Georgia, and I think she got a little bit of a slap on the wrist for that. But I mean, that usually tends to be the case.
It has been the case a lot in the reported news that I have seen, and yes, in Colorado, I used to work in Colorado quite a lot. The chairman of the Republican Party for the state used to rail all the time about mail ballot fraud. Every meeting he was yelling about mail ballot fraud. Well, guess what? He and his wife divorced. He voted her ballot when she had left the state, and she was no longer a resident. He got it. He voted her ballot, and he ended up in big trouble. He was criminally charged.
Hit dogs are gonna holler. So talk to me about what Democrats are concerned about. They're concerned about misuse, not just by, again, spouses or family members, but by activists as well.
Certainly, because, and I don't know of any other state who has done anything like what Georgia and Secretary Raffensperger had just done, and that is to put an application on the website where someone can go in and cancel voter registration of anyone that they've got just a little bit of personal identifying information on, the name, birth date, or driver's license, or 4 digits of the social security number, will automatically cancel the voter registration of whoever you put the data in for. And apparently there is, now I'm not an expert on this, I've not tried to do it myself. Apparently there is some notification of the voter whose voter registration is being canceled on the back end. But the impression from reading the press is that that voter registration cancellation would take place right away, and no telling when they would get the cancellation.
Well, and
so
and that's the other thing. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is they're pointing to the inefficiency of the postal system, but then they're going to use the postal system to inform you that you've been canceled.
Yeah, at some point. And for someone who really wanted to create a lot of mischief, they could do this shortly before election day, and nobody would get notified in time.
Mm-hmm.
They would just show up at the polls and not be on the rolls to be able to vote. But when you think about, you could do it with an ex-spouse or your current spouse. You don't want her to vote. You don't like the way she's going to vote, or your kids, or your neighbors. But the data is so easy to come by, Ron. I have 5 million Georgia voter names, birth dates, driver's license numbers, social security numbers. There are many other people who do. Want to know how I got it?
Yes.
Okay. Back in 2016 and 2017, the Secretary of State's server was leaking this data out onto the internet.
That's right.
And you remember how they were warned by a guy who turned out to be one of our experts, Logan Lamb. They were warned and left it out there over a year. Let it keep leaking. So how many people may have gotten that list of 5 million voters? And the driver's license numbers don't change. The birth dates don't change. The names don't change. So, that list of 5 million, even with lots of, people moving in and out of the state, that's probably a few million still valid there. And no telling how many people have that, which could lead to someone using lists like that in an automated way, not just to cancel a friend that you're mad at the way they're going to vote or a spouse, but thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands at one time.
We're with Marilyn Marks, Executive Director, the Coalition for Good Governance. I got one more question I want to ask you about the rapidity, the haste in which we get results. Stand by for that. We're on the Ron Show today talking about election integrity and Georgia's new voter cancellation website portal. Fascinating stuff. Back after this on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. You can follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms. That would be at Ron Show ATL on the Facebook, Twitter, X platform, Threads, Instagram. I've gotten a lot better about Threads, mostly because I tied it to my Instagram. Anyway, Marilyn Marks joins us. She is the Vice President and Executive Director at the Coalition for Good Governance. We're talking about Georgia's new voter cancellation portal, which on the surface sounds like, a convenient way. It's kind of like mail forwarding, except it's voter cancellation on the backside. I wanted to ask you about what could potentially delay results on Election Day. We saw in 2020 where Donald Trump declared victory early in some states that really weren't nailed down. And I feel like we're winding up, we're heading towards this route where we could see this happen again in the state of Georgia. If we all show up to vote and a lot of us have to ask for provisional ballots because someone took us off the voter rolls through this new voter cancellation portal, could that not be a nightmare scenario where a bunch of provisional ballots are sitting on the side waiting for verification for however many days or weeks it takes for them to verify that, yes, someone nefarious did cancel our voter registration and it should be reactivated?
Absolutely. That would be one of many problems. They would run out of provisional ballots, of course, because they don't keep that many provisional ballots at the polling place if there were mass cancellations. And yes, it would take a while. They could work through it. It wouldn't, well, it depends on how many they cancel, but it wouldn't necessarily create inordinate delays, but it would be an absolute mess. And then, of course, the doubt that is cast when you have to delay your results because of having so many provisional ballots to deal with. And provisional ballots are just clumsy, and quite frankly, they're often inaccurately counted because it's a complex process to go through. So that would just be one of many of the concerns. But Ron, if there were mass cancellations and inappropriate mass cancellations, the first thing that would happen is that people would just give up and walk away from the polls and not stand in line to cast their ballot, and they would be disenfranchised.
Yes.
We wouldn't have a vote to count for them.
And it's not as if we haven't seen sowing the seeds of doubt and what sort of repercussions that could cause, as we saw on January 6, 2021.
Right.
So,
and we don't know who might do this kind of thing and their motives. It could be someone just wanting to see the anarchy, not even having a particular political position in mind, but just for the fun of, I want to watch the anarchy.
Oh, well,
it's just ridiculous that the secretary is doing this.
No, well, not only could that be domestic, but it could be a foreign operative as well.
Absolutely.
And you were telling me a local cybersecurity expert from Georgia Tech, Richard DeMillo, really, to me, he cast the darkest cloud over all of this.
Yes. Yesterday, when he read the stories, he text messaged some of us and said, do they understand this could be used as a very effective denial of service attack? And I go, what do you mean, Rich?
Yeah.
And he says, look, you've got these long list of voters, millions of voters on one list. He says you could write a little code and make this an automated process so that you're not sitting there entering every voter's name, every birth date, every social security number. Just write a little script, make it automated. And imagine that run just targeting all the people who are in, I don't know, DeKalb County who pulled a Republican ballot in their primary. And we target them. And, so you could do this in a politically targeted way. Get rid of the people who might cast an undesirable ballot. So get rid of them on the poll. So no, I had not even thought about anything other than entering one voter at a time.
Yeah.
That's enough abuse of the system. But to think about somebody being able to do it, apparently you don't need lots of sophisticated hacking knowledge. You could do that and create mass cancellations.
So are you suggesting that anyone who has the same data that you say you have when the Secretary of State's office was leaking this stuff back in 2016 could also take that sort of automated and just do it en masse?
That's what I'm understanding from Dr. DeMillo. Yes. And as I'm saying, not only en masse, with tens of thousands at a time, but targeted.
Yeah.
Figure out the kind of people that I really don't want voting.
Right.
You know what? People under 30 can't be trusted, right? So get rid of them.
So what can folks do? When I talked about this briefly yesterday on my show, I essentially just surmised that, well, I feel like you're just going to have to log on every day and check your voter registration just to make sure that you're still in there every day. I mean, do we have to do this every day?
Well, let's first collectively jump on the Secretary of State to take the darn thing down.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and get rid of the problem, and then I think demand from the Secretary of State, and I also say the State Election Board, get progressive groups to coordinate a demand that not only do they take it down, but they do some serious testing, make that testing transparent to make sure that it hasn't already been abused. And then, check routinely. You don't necessarily need to check every day, but, between now and November, particularly as we roll into October. Start checking until you vote. But first, let's try to remove the danger and insist that the secretary remove the danger, and that will help a lot. And insist that they do testing.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen over the last couple of years where conservative groups have been challenging voter rolls for quite a while. I mean, what's to stop them from saying, well, let's just circumvent the process and do this on our own?
Oh, well, that was the first thing that came to my mind when I read about this.
Wow.
That they would see this as a, wow, we no longer have to go through these massive hearings and public scrutiny.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would expect that they would use artificial intelligence tools to help figure out who they wanted to cancel.
All right. Well,
and so, it sounds like a boon for that effort.
Yeah.
So let's shut it down. People, there are great progressive groups out there who've got the reach to do this, and the lawyers on board who can do it. And let's try to motivate them to do this.
This story is 2 days old, though, and it's not really gotten a lot of traction. So I want to thank you for joining me this morning to try and make a little bit more noise on this, get a little bit more smoke going for this fire. Marilyn Marks, Coalition for Good Government Executive Director. Thank you for joining me the Ron Show this morning.
Thank you, Ron. Nice to be with you.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Some of y'all did not bother standing in line for 2 hours through searing heat and then rain and then searing humidity to get inside to watch Kamala Harris in Atlanta yesterday. That's okay. It's on YouTube. And also, I'm going to give you the audio of her speaking to the packed house, 10,000 plus, at Georgia State University's Convocation Center. Let's listen in.
everybody. Oh, it's good to be back in Georgia. Thank you, everyone. Can we please hear it for Tyler? I want to thank Tyler for that incredible introduction. I invited him and several other young entrepreneurs to come and visit with me at the White House, and we had a really very long and important conversation about the future of America. And Tyler, you represent the best of our future. Thank you for that. Thank you. And please give it up for Quavo and Megan. So it is so good to see everyone. And let me also thank our incredible members of Congress who are with us this evening. Senator John Ossoff, Senator Raphael Warnock, and Representative Nikema Williams. To Mayor Andre Dickens, thank you for welcoming me back to Atlanta. And thank you to the great Stacey Abrams for your extraordinary leadership. So, Georgia, it is so good to be back, and I am very clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. So I'm gonna get into some business now. Okay, I I'm going to get into some business now. All right. So, Georgia, as many of you know, before, and have a seat if you have a chair. As many of you know, before I was elected vice president and before I was elected a United States senator, I was an elected attorney general and an elected district attorney. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. So in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. Like him my entire career. For example, as Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges that was scamming students. Well, Donald Trump ran a for-profit college that scammed students. As a prosecutor, I specialized in child sexual abuse cases and sexual abuse cases. Well, Trump was found liable for committing sexual abuse. And as an attorney general, I held the big Wall Street banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of fraud. 34 counts. Put my record against his any day of the week. Any day of the week. Including, for example, on the issue of immigration. So I was the Attorney General of a border state. In that job, I walked underground tunnels between the United States and Mexico on that border with law enforcement officers. I went after transnational gangs, drug cartels, and human traffickers that came into our country illegally. I prosecuted them in case after case, and I won. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been talking a big game about securing our border, but he does not walk the walk. Or as my friend Quavo would say, he does not walk it like he talks it. So look, our administration worked on the most significant border security bill in decades. Some of the most conservative Republicans in Washington, D.C. supported the bill. Even the Border Patrol endorsed it. It was all set to pass. But at the last minute, Trump directed his allies in the Senate to vote it down. Right. He tanked the bipartisan deal because he thought it would help him win an election. Which goes to show Donald Trump does not care about border security. He only cares about himself. And when I am president, I will work to actually solve the problem. So here my pledge to you. As president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law and show Donald Trump what real leadership looks like. But make no mistake, this campaign is not just about us versus Donald Trump. Truly, this campaign is about two very different visions for our nation. One focused on the future, the other focused on the past. We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity to build a business, to own a home, to build intergenerational wealth, a future with affordable health care, affordable child care, paid leave. And all of this is to say, building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. Because we here all know, when our middle class is strong, America is strong. And to keep our middle class strong, families need relief from the high cost of living so that they have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. And yes, it is true that by many indicators, our economy is the strongest in the world. But while inflation is down and wages are up, prices are still too high. You know it and I know it. And when we win this election, here's what we're going to do about it. On day one, I will take on price gouging and bring down costs. We will ban more of those hidden fees and surprise late charges that banks and other companies use to pad their profits. We will take on corporate landlords and cap unfair rent increases. And we will take on Big Pharma to cap prescription drug costs for all Americans. Our plan will lower costs and save many middle-class families thousands of dollars a year. But Donald Trump has a different plan in mind, one that would raise prices on middle-class families. Just look at his Project 2025 agenda. I take it you've seen it. Project 2025 is a plan to weaken the middle class. Be clear. And Donald Trump intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. He intends to gut our investments in clean energy jobs. He intends to end the Affordable Care Act, to take us back to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. You guys remember what that was? Children with asthma, breast cancer survivors, grandparents with diabetes. Georgia, America has tried these failed policies before, and we are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. That's right. for the future, and it is a fight for freedom. Across our nation, we are witnessing a full-on assault on hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. The freedom to vote, the freedom to be safe from gun violence, the freedom to live without fear of bigotry and hate, the freedom to love who you love openly and with pride, the freedom to learn and acknowledge our true and full history, and the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
Kamala Harris in Atlanta yesterday. That's audio from her rally. We will finish up the rest of her remarks, and we've got some in-audience audio as well. Thanks to my friend Calvin. Good job, Calvin. When the Ron Show returns here on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Real quick, before we get back to the culmination of Kamala Harris's remarks in Atlanta at her largest rally to date, my friend Calvin, who went with me to see Kamala speak yesterday, stood in line with a couple of young ladies for a couple of hours. We got to know them pretty well. Ironically, we never got each other's names. But I did introduce her to the show, both of them actually, and so hopefully they're listening at some point in time. Calvin, sneaky Calvin, he's a former radio guy too. I went to the concession stand only to get to the line and realize I wasn't going to wait that long for anything to drink, so I just went back to my seat. But while I was gone, he decided to quiz one of the ladies about their support for Kamala Harris. Here's some of that audio.
So as a Georgian for Kamala, what's most important for you in this election?
Women's rights. Period.
Yeah, right on cue.
No one should have authority over what a woman decides to do with her body.
Calvin also asked her what she thought about Joe Biden.
I have much love and respect for Biden. He did what he can do with what he had, and I think he did a phenomenal job. And I'm still believe that he's still gonna do more work, you know? So it's good to know when it's a good time to bow out. And he's not necessarily bowing out, in my opinion. So I'm proud of him. Even if he kept going, he still would have had my vote.
Wow.
Either way.
How about that? All right, so let's wrap up. We've got the final few minutes of Kamala Harris's remarks from Atlanta yesterday. Let's listen back.
Ours is a fight for the future and for freedom. And I don't have to tell folks in Atlanta that generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, the baton is in our hands. Each and every one of us. And we love our country. We love our country. And I believe it is the highest form of patriotism to fight for the ideals of our country. And so, we who believe in the sacred freedom to vote will finally pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We who believe in the freedom to live safe from gun violence will finally pass universal background checks, red flag laws, and an assault weapons ban. We who believe in reproductive freedom will stop Donald Trump's extreme abortion bans, and when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law. So November 5th is in 98 days. In 98 days, and let's level set. Friends, let's level set. We have a fight in front of us. We have a fight in front of us, and we are the underdogs in this race. We are. But you see, this is a people-powered campaign. Ours is a people-powered campaign. In fact, after I announced my candidacy, we saw the best week of grassroots fundraising in presidential campaign history. And if you go to KamalaHarris.com, you can help us build on that success. So the momentum in this race is shifting. And there are signs that Donald Trump is feeling it. You may have noticed. So last week, you may have seen, he pulled out of the debate in September he had previously agreed to. So here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about that. So he won't debate, but he and his running mate sure seem to have a lot to say about me. And by the way, don't you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird? Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say, say it to my face. Georgia, in the next 98 days, we have our work cut out for us. And this is not going to be easy. This is hard work, but we like hard work. Hard work is good work. So, Georgia, today I ask you, are you ready to get to work? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States.
And there you go. Vice President Kamala Harris, now the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party at her largest rally to date. It was a concert. It was a political rally. It was electric. Donald Trump, by the way, will be visiting the very same venue this weekend. It'll be interesting to see. I guess we'll be comparing crowd sizes. Anyway, she has not only challenged him to reset the debate schedule, but to say whatever he's got to say to her face. I want to thank Calvin for helping me get some of that audio. That was an unexpected delight and surprise. He sent it to me last night after we got back. And I also want to thank Marilyn Marks, the executive director with the Coalition for Good Governance, for joining me to discuss the dangers of this now open portal for the potential to take folks off of voter registration rolls. Call the Secretary of State's office. Reach out to them. Let them know you're distinct for that as well. Show notes at ronshowatl.com. See you tomorrow. Have a great one, y'all.